This week, the talk title is Let's Go Tobogganing. 2 weeks ago, we started our series by starting a spiritual passport for our journey. It starts out with an acronym of PACK, P-A-C-K, which is passionately allowing curious kindness. So when we do that, that gets us ready and able to go on a spiritual journey, because now we're not tied down to our spiritual sofa anymore. We've got the energy and the means to get us going. And then last week, we talked about finding the Valley of the Kings. And we realized that the Valley of the Kings isn't that place far off in Egypt, but the Valley of the Kings is that place inside of us. Our spiritual Valley of the Kings is filled with wisdom and intelligence and clarity. And there's many venues in the spiritual Valley of the Kings that we can access. And last week, for your spiritual passport, I gave you visas, a place that you could go, a venue within the Valley of the Kings that you could go and visit during the week as a reminder. And the topics were abundance and health and joy and love. So you got to decide which of these places within yourself, within your own Valley of the Kings, were you going to touch. And now this week, the talk title is Let's Go Tobogganing. Now, if you don't know what the term tobogganing is, which, if you're from Southern California, maybe you've never been on a toboggan, right? A toboggan is actually a sled that's made primarily for kids nowadays. And, it's so that you can go down on the snow, which doesn't really exist in Southern California. But if you are from Alaska, like me, there's plenty of snow when I was a child. Lots and lots and lots of snow. And if you're not familiar with tobogganing as a term, maybe you're familiar with the Winter Olympic sports of bobsledding and the luge. Now those guys are crazy. They really are. They are going down that track at 90 miles per hour with no brakes. There's not a brake on that thing. They're just going down. And so we're going to be talking about them because I find them fascinating. But, for myself as a child in Alaska, I didn't have anything near the luge experience, but I did have a fair amount of sledding in my lifetime. I remember the first time that I went sledding, I was 5 years old. First time myself. I had been down the hills with my brother before that. But this particular time, I decided to sneak. And I snuck my brother's sled out. And it's one of those, that's got the two metal runners and the thing on the front that you steer the sled with. Now, since I had never been on it myself, I didn't realize that I was only 5 years old. I wasn't strong enough to actually steer the mechanism. So when I went down the hill, I just was going wherever that thing was taking me, which ended up being right there in a tree. Now, as I look back as an adult, I kind of wonder, whatever got me on a sled again after that, right? But I know the answer. The answer is that it was exciting. It was fun. Even, forget the tree part. If you could avoid the trees, it was a lot of fun. And, in Alaska, in the wintertime, there's not a lot of things that you can do that are a lot of fun, that are exciting, so especially at a young age. So I was happy to go sledding, and I did a lot of sledding. When I was 10 years old, we moved to another place in Anchorage, and it was next to a place called Russian Jack Springs Park. And Russian Jack Springs was basically a large wooded area, and it had a spring in it, of course. A little creek that I would go and do, I would fish in the creek during the summertime, try and stay out of it during the wintertime because it was cold. And then they had a golf course in the middle of the park. And since a golf course doesn't have any purpose whatsoever in the wintertime in Alaska, right? the kids would take it over. And there was a hill there that was about 20 or 30 feet high, and it was kind of steep, and it didn't have any trees on it, and we would take it over as our sledding area, right? And we would sled like you wouldn't believe. And at the beginning of the year, it would be all snowy, and you'd go down it, and it would be kind of slow because, you know, sleds on snow don't go that fast. But as more and more and more kids went sledding down that thing, you compressed the snow, and you ended up with this sheet of ice. And so after a while, that slope, which didn't seem to be all that tall until you went whizzing down it, became this heart-pounding experience, and a lot of excitement, a lot of fun. Now, you know, it would end out on the golf course, and so you had quite a bit of room, and we would pack up this snowbank at the other end of the golf course so that you didn't go into the trees. And your goal, you know, if you were adventurous, was to get up enough speed that you went all the way into the snowbank. And there's lots of different types of sleds that we would use. There was the toboggan. You know, a toboggan is actually that one that has the wood strips that come up and curve in the front. That's a toboggan. And it's very iconic looking. In fact, I remember at one point in my childhood, my friend had a toboggan, and we would ride it. It was nice because you could get 3 or 4 people on it. And a photographer from the newspaper came and took our picture, you know, and I got my 2 minutes of fame on the newspaper that day. I wish I had that picture. It was actually pretty unique because it was just us kind of looking down this hill onto the forest below and the setting sun and the golf course and everything. It was really nice. But I don't have it. Maybe I'll go to the library when I go to Alaska next time and pull it up. But so there was toboggans, and then there was those sleds like I hit my head with. I stayed away from those. And then, there was the round ones, the saucer ones that, you know, just had the strings of rope for handles, and you would go down, you would spin around and around, and end up going backwards down the hill. And then there was my racer. I love this racer. It was a racing sled. It was made out of plastic, but you sat in it with your feet out, and in the back you had these little handbrakes. And I loved it because you could steer with it, right? You could go pull it up and go this way, or pull this one and go that way, or pull both of them and stop. And I loved the fact that I could go down this hill fast as could be, but still be in a little bit of control. And that ended up kind of being a metaphor, really, for all of my life, because, you know, I am a recovering control freak. I like to think of myself, recently I've decided I'm an integrated control freak, but that's because, you know, it doesn't draw on me as much as it used to, but it's still always there. You know, I need to keep an eye on it, you know, and water it as needed. But so, you know, as a control freak, it was a metaphor. And so what I've decided, you're probably sitting there going, God, Scott's gone on a lot about tobogganing. What does that have to do with spiritual journeying? Well, what I realized as I was thinking about the sledding and everything that I did as a kid was that there's a few ways of going down the hill sledding, and they really kind of tell the story of how we can live our lives, and how we live our lives is how we do our spiritual journeys too. And so, you know, the 3 ways that I'm thinking about is there were kids who would get on the sled and they would lay face down and they would drag their feet behind them, right? And that was just to slow themselves down, right? They didn't want to be the ones that were rocketing down the slope. And then there was me and my little blue racer and my, you know, being in control. I liked that. That was fun. And then there was the guys who would go out and they would run and they would jump on their sleds just like the bobsledders in the Olympics, and they would go down, and their goal was to go as fast as they could and to get all the way over to the snowbank and stop there. So let's just take those 3 ways of being, and let's talk about them a little bit and see how they apply to our lives and how we do our spiritual traveling. So the first one was, remember the guys that dragged their feet. Now, why would we drag our feet? Well, I think we drag our feet a little bit in life when we're just tired of the change. You know, the world's going a little bit fast and we want it to slow down a little bit, right? I'm comfortable being where I've been, doing what I'm doing, thinking what I'm thinking. And by the way, you know, when we do these different modes of life, we're never in one all the time. We flit between these three different ways. So at the time that we're kind of dragging our feet, for whatever reason, it's perfectly okay. It's just being aware of it. But the consequence of being in that mode of life is that as we drag our feet a little bit, we're not allowing the creativity that is God and the universe to kind of come through us, because we're saying, no, I don't want the change. I want to stay where I am for right now, right? And Ernest Holmes says in Can We Talk to God? He says, there is a place in us that is open to the infinite, but when Spirit brings its gifts by pouring itself through us, it can only give us what we take. The taking is mental, right? So Ernest Holmes is saying that we need to be open to that infinite, the infinite possibilities. Now, another way of thinking about that same thing is I'm taking a class called Physics of the Soul right now in ministerial school. And it's being taught by Dr. Amit Goswami, who's a physicist, right? So physics of the soul makes sense. And he talks about classical mechanics versus quantum mechanics. And in classical mechanics, you know, the billiard ball you can study. You can measure these two billiard balls if they're going to collide with each other. And you know exactly the position and how fast and what their mass is. So I can tell you, because I'm a physicist too, I can tell you exactly where those balls are going to go. Now, on the other hand, with quantum mechanics, you're studying electrons. You're measuring electrons and where are they now and where are they going to be. And you really don't have a clue. Right? There's no real knowing in quantum mechanics on electrons. What it's really saying is there's a probability that you'll find it here, and another probability that you'll find it all the way on the other side of the room. But the thing about that is, in that quantum gap there, that's the place that God has to create. Because if you could always just measure everything and know where it was going, there would be no place for creativity in the universe, right? It would all just be calculatable. And it would, to be honest, be a little boring after a while. So, you know, what I'm offering is when you're in that place of dragging your feet a little bit, it's okay. Just be aware and decide whether or not in this moment you want to change and maybe open yourself up in that quantum way of being and allow God to pour through you, right? And accept some of that creative essence that God is into your life. Now, the second way of being was like on the racer. You know, the second way of sledding was going down the hill on the racer with the little handbrakes. Now, why would you want to have a set of handbrakes, right? You'd want them in order to control. And why do you want control? Well, for me, you know, wanting control is about the fact that the universe doesn't seem safe in that moment. You know, if I'm going down the hill and I think I need to turn left, it's because I think over on the right-hand side there's something bad over there that I want to get away from, right? So in that time, in that way of being, I'm just being in control because, I think I want to make my life as interesting as possible, but still make it safe, right? I like going down the hill, I like going fast, but I like going where I'm going to go. But again, I'm limiting creativity a little bit by doing that, right? I'm limiting it to what I have in my mind and what I'm making up for my life. A spiritual teacher, his name is Adyashanti, and he's a contemporary teacher. You can actually go see him. He says, what the universe will manifest when you are in alignment with it is more interesting than what you try to manifest. Don't you think that's true? I found it to be true. When you allow the universe to create around you and not just decide on where you're going to go, allow the universe to decide where, but also be in a place of allowing the universe to have it show up in the way that the universe is going to have it show up, rather than the way I'm going to have it show up. What I've found is that I get a much more interesting result. It's not necessarily bad to have and get what you want, but the thing to remember is that maybe, just maybe, you're limiting the world around you a little bit. So what I would say is when you find yourself in the little blue racer with the brakes going, maybe just let it be. Let it go. See where you're going to go, because in reality, the universe is really a safe place to be. God is always looking out for our highest good. That's what I believe anyway. Now, the third way of being is, the third way you do the sledding is to dive on it like you're one of the Olympic bobsledders. And when you're doing that, what you're really doing is you're saying, God, take me where you will. Take me wherever I'm going to go. And what I want to do is I want to have as much fun going down that hill as I can, and I hope to get all the way over to that snowbank. Now, when you're in that mode, you do have to just allow things to be. Because, if you're on a bobsled and you're going 90 miles an hour, if the track is turning to the left, if you decide you want to turn to the right, there's nothing but disaster in that recipe, right? You got to, if you're going to allow yourself to go, you have to go. And the bobsledders, when they're going down that track, they have to have faith. They have to have faith in the people who designed the track. They have to have faith in the people who built the track. They have to have faith that they're going to go down, and as long as they do their job, which is they actually do have to turn into the corners a little bit. I haven't tried this, but I would think that if you just strapped a sack of potatoes to a bobsled and sent it down the track, that it wouldn't make it to the bottom, right? The riders have something to do, right? They have to turn with the turns and, be ready for the hills and all that type of stuff. And that's what we're called on doing when we're on the bobsled of life and we've allowed God to just take over and give us that rush. I know when I'm on that bobsled ride, because when that occurs in my life, I kind of go away. Time just disappears for me. And it's because I'm no longer in the doings. It's because I'm in the being. I am being whatever I was called to be in that particular moment. And it's a divine place to be. It's a divine place to live from. And it's a place that I aspire to, right? We only get to, in our lives, the best way to approach these spiritual journeys is really just to know where you are in this moment, understand it, allow it to be, and then make a decision, make a choice. Because God is always responding to our choices in every moment. And there's an old saying in teaching that, let's see if I can get the P's correct on this, principle is not predicated on precedent, right? And that's so true, right? It just means that as I am right now, I always have the choice to move to a different realm of sledding. If I'm in the place of being in control and things are going too fast, well, I just get to drag my feet for a while. It's okay. But then I can choose after that, once I've gotten comfortable, I can choose to get on the bobsled. That's okay too. So what I'm inviting you to do on our spiritual journey that we've been going on for the last 3 weeks is to go ahead and decide for the moment, which of the bobsleds, which type of sledding do you want to be on right now? Which one is appropriate for your journey at this moment? And so I'm just going to finish up by saying that, we've been having handouts that I've given you for each of the weeks. So we had the spiritual passport with the pack on it the first week and some stickers, and then last week we had the visas. Well, this week we have, when you go into a country, you have to tell them, some of the things that you're bringing. I forget what that's called, actually. A what? A declaration statement, thank you. So you have the declaration statement there for your inventory that you're bringing. I think you'll enjoy it. Just go ahead and read through it. Gabriel made that up for us. It's a little bit small print, so you might have to get your glasses out. I know I did. But go ahead and enjoy one of those. And I appreciate so much being here. Thank you. So let's just go within for a second and pray. So I drop down inside of me to that place that knows that it knows that it knows. I drop down to that place inside that experiences all types of sledding. That power and that presence that lives itself in, as, and through us. And it doesn't have any judgment on us. It doesn't carry any judgments about how we do our sledding. It just knows us because it is us. And it knows us and is us and it works through us and as us at the molecular level, really. It is so integrally us that we can never be separated from it. That life and that power and presence that God is. And so I know that as we have come together as a community to go on a spiritual journey, that we are absolutely supported in that journey. That God, as love, as peace, as joy, as prosperity, all comes together. It comes together in a path that fits exactly right for us, on a track that's laid out especially for us. And for knowing that truth of our lives as the life that God is, I just give thanks. And I release this prayer into the law, knowing that it's already fulfilled in the mind that God is, and I say it is good and very good. And so it is. Amen.